Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ian Grady, and welcome to 5 Years with Zen Master. Before we begin tonight's introduction for our speaker, I'd like to share with you some advice that my grandfather's always given me. And that advice is, if you ever want to write something of meaning, do it like Ernest Hemingway. And for all of those who don't know, Mr. Hemingway, when he wanted to write a novel or an essay, he'd go to a podium much like this one, in an auditorium much like this one, and he would read aloud every single word that he ever wrote. And if his words weren't from the heart, they weren't visceral, they weren't blood on paper, he'd crumble it up and throw them on the floor. Well, as the legend has it, there were many nights where he would leave that auditorium without a page written and crumble a piece of paper above his ankle. Well, I share with you that piece of advice because when August Turak asked me to give me this introduction, you better believe that I went to an auditorium much like this one and practiced this introduction. Because that's how much his friendship, his guidance means to me. You know, about a year ago when we met, I was completely lost in a state of total despair, and after meeting and working with him, I've just now live a life that is just completely and totally fascinating, and I can't wait to get home and transcribe his talk tonight. So now many of you are here tonight because you're either interested in Zen or you're intrigued by August's business career as either a CEO of a top software company, a founding member of music television, or perhaps he's a contributor for Forbes.com, and if that wasn't enough, he's coming out with a book entitled The Business Secrets of the Trappist Monk. It will be published by Columbia University Press. But what separates August from most business guys is that he attributes all of his success as a byproduct from working with 5 years with a Zen Master and continuing his spiritual life. And to my chagrin, he says that running a company is like kindergarten in comparison to the spiritual journey. So therefore, I think we're here tonight because we're here to listen to a person that hasn't lived vicariously and that chose to attack the big existential questions with everything that he had. Therefore, let's let this evening be an invitation to transformation, and that August will take you into the high country of the mind, down the labyrinth of your soul, to the doors in our hearts that we so often either choose to ignore, and if we do open them, we never make the full plunge. The spiritual journey, as August will tell you, is a commitment marked by real decisions that can lead into estrangement, alienation, and increasing disorientation. But in the end, or as some may say, the rebirth, we can achieve or experience the ultimate freedom. As the great Jim Morrison once said, there is the known and the unknown, and in between them are the doors. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. August Turak.
Wow, it's not easy to follow an introduction like that. I'm kind of, when I asked Ian to just keep on talking, I was all fired up, I'm ready to go. I don't know what he was talking about, but it's for me. Let's do it. Thanks so much, and Ian did a fabulous job with other members of the SKS, including Melissa, to put this talk on, all the posters and all the work that goes into putting on an event. So I'd like you guys to kind of give them a hand. And I'd like you guys to do me a real simple, one of the things about Zen is the boldness and going for it and all that kind of stuff. Could you move up, everybody, and fill these chairs in? Makes me feel like, you know, there's spirits, Tibetan spirits haunting me up here. Good job. I'm taking notes here as who's moving and who's not. Anybody that moved has 3 less reincarnations they have to deal with. The rest of you are strapped to the wheel. So, I want to start with, how many of you guys have any kind of knowledge at all about Zen, Buddhism? A few people anyway, so how many of those people know what a Zen koan is? All right, can one of you guys tell me what it, you sir, you look intelligent, even though you got your arms crossed, which means you're closed. Hoping I wouldn't call on you. What is a Zen koan?
It's a small phrase, or just a short sentence usually, that kind of makes someone think in a way that they've never really thought before.
Good. Anybody else? Yes?
It's a phrase that is basically illogical and makes no sense, and so it sort of scrambles the brain, and the brain has to sort of come at life and things a different way.
Exactly. It's I would go beyond a phrase, it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle that's designed to open up the mind and let the truth in, because what's fundamental to Zen is that there's this masks that we wear in the ego and all this stuff, and our preconceptions and our habitual ways. You know, I even write about this in business, you know, that the problem with most people in business is that they think that success is a matter of what you think. It's not a matter of what you think, it's a matter of how you think. And the vast majority of people think that thinking is thinking is thinking, and it's not true at all. Everybody thinks different. You know, what did Steve Jobs tell us, right? Think different. Still bothers me. Differently, it should be. I know why he did it. And he's a genius, so he's allowed to do that. So I want to start with a little Zen koan for you guys. Some of you, if you have papers and pencils, it might help. It's going to be a very, very short koan. And I'm not going to take credit for inventing this. Actually, this koan was given to me by a colleague of mine when I was working for MTV Music Television back in 1981 when it first started out. And we were on the subway, and we were going to a client meeting. I believe it was the 7th Avenue subway, and he turned to me and he said, I have a riddle for you. Give me the next number in this series. 14, 18, 23, 28, 34. What's the next number in that series? 43? Why? Who said 43? Why is it 43?
Because you have the 483.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be rude, I just heard 43 a lot of times. Anybody else? Yeah.
I think it's 33.
Why is it 33? It's going to go backwards from 34 to 33? 14, 18, 23, 28, 34. All right, I'm going to give a hint. Is anybody here from New York City? Nobody from New York City?
Okay, I would guess.
What is it?
You continue to add one additional number to the number that was added before, 4, 5, 6.
All right, and in the interest of time, I'm going to give you the answer, and then I'm going to see if anybody can ask the question that will lead to this answer. The correct answer is 42. And the reason is that's the next stop on the 7th Avenue subway line. Now, every one of you guys made the exact same mistake, right? It's not a question of content. It isn't whether it's 33, or it's 43, or it's 36. It was a problem of process. It wasn't what you were thinking. It was how you were thinking, right? What was the big mistake everybody made?
Looking for cities.
You thought it was arithmetic or mathematical. It has nothing to do with arithmetic or math. Did I tell anybody that had anything to do with arithmetic or mathematics? You assumed something. It was not a valid assumption. Now you might say, I've never been to New York, so how am I going to know that it's 42 is the next step? But the actual answer is, and I actually, she's in the SKS, and she was a North Carolina State student, and I gave her to her, and within 3 seconds, she's only probably one of two or three people that have ever gotten this riddle in my life. And she just looked at me and said, does it have anything to do with numbers? So what's interesting, here's a Zen koan, opening you up to a whole different way of thinking, showing you that it's what you assume, what you bring to the table, the box that you're in that's causing all the problems. It shows you that there's no way out of the box as long as you don't question those basic assumptions. How long and how much mathematics would you have to program into a computer to get this answer? Infinite. It doesn't have a mathematical answer. But the answer really is not 42. The answer is coming to a new way of asking a question. Is it mathematical? Once you ask that question, you're 90% home. As a matter of fact, because I know a lot of people aren't from New York City, anybody who answers that question with a question always get full marks. Because I didn't tell any of you either that you couldn't ask me a question, did I? For more clarification or for... So, the secret to life, ladies and gentlemen, the secret to Zen is asking different kinds of questions and getting out of the box. Now, I have a lot of fun with this in business because this is a very, very fundamental Zen principle. It's, by the way, the reason why people have so hard a time understanding Zen. Because we want to know, what does Zen say God wears on Thursdays? Well, all the assumptions are built in there that God has Thursdays, God wears things, He wears different things sometimes. And so the Zen Master ends up saying, now how do I answer that question? So he ends up coming up with some silly answer to try and jolt the person out of that. Now, so in business we talk about getting outside the box. It's not business specific, science, whatever. And it's highly correlated with creativity. Creative people are really, really good at jumping out, what you can call it, get outside the box, jump outside the system, question the assumptions, see connections that other people don't see. These are all, and interestingly enough, Zen built a whole philosophy about that in like 400, 500, 600 AD. Even today, it's really, really difficult because the next question I want to pose for you, how do you teach this? You really, really think about this. Can you lecture people into this? No. The more you lecture them, the more boxes you build for them. Can they read a book and walk away with very creative outside-the-box thinkers? No. Can you memorize something and learn? No. As a matter of fact, if you think of every typical traditional educational method that we rely on in Western society, and a lot of Eastern society too, has relied on going all the way back to Plato. You build boxes, you don't get outside of them. So what is needed, and this is a very, very practical thing, something that I work on with business clients and stuff like that, is how do you teach people to be creative by teaching outside the box thinking. Now the one final thing I want to leave you with about Zen is that the radical hypothesis, because Zen doesn't talk about believing anything, they pose hypotheses and you're supposed to either prove it or not prove it for yourself if it intuitively attracts you. What is the ultimate box? You get outside of a small box like arithmetic, and then you get outside of this box, and then you get outside of that box. The ultimate box, according to physics, according to Zen, by the way, and all the religious traditions, but especially the Eastern ones, what is the ultimate box? What's the biggest box you can imagine? Universe. The universe itself, space and time, is a box. This isn't my opinion. Now, these mystics have been saying this for thousands of years. In the East, they talk about Maya. This is all just an illusion. Even Christian mystics talk about it. But now, of course, they were all poo-pooed. Oh, ridiculous. And then, of course, we got our nice physicists come along and say, listen, there's this thing called the Big Bang. And I actually heard Hawking say this not too recently. Actually, he said there's nothing, of course he says it through his electronic voice, there's nothing in physics that has anything surprising about the fact that something can emerge out of nothing. The universe emerged out of nothing, And in that emergent space-time, everything we consider reality was artificially created, with the idea that someday in the future or somehow could go back to that singularity. Of course, does anybody know what a singularity is? Singularity is that thing that was supposed to be there where the Big Bang happened out of. And I'm addicted to these physics shows on TV, and astronomers always looking, on TV, and they laugh into the camera and they say, well, a singularity is a word that we created for something that we don't have a clue about. So poor old Thomas Aquinas was an idiot because he argued in the 1200 AD that God created the universe ex nihilo out of nothing. But now that Stephen Hawking's bandies it about, it's fine. But the point is, Zen has this radical theory, as do, by the way, the other mystics, yoga, Christian mystics, Sufis, guys like Parmenides, not Parmenides, Paulinus, I think, the Greek mystic, that there is a way out of the entire shebang. Anybody ever heard of Douglas Hofstadter? Yeah, he's an atheist, but he even speculates about it. He said if there's any solution, he's a computer, artificial intelligence, genius guy. He says, I'm fascinated by Zen. Because everything that we know is we have to get outside the system in order to be able to look back at the system to understand anything. And Zen has this idea that there's an ultimate getting outside of the system. Or as Einstein said, no problem can be solved at the same level of consciousness at which it is posed. In the next few days, I'm going to put that out on my Facebook page or something. I just want to get people's comments because I thought a lot about Einstein's coding. No problem can be solved at the same level of consciousness at which it is posed. So I started this all out because I want to give you, I don't want to talk too much more about Zen and its philosophy, because I want to get into, this is really a storytelling night. I want to tell you about how I got into this stuff, what I discovered, my first teacher, and one of the things that I want to use is, I want to say right now, is that this I love giving this lecture, and one of the reasons I do is because it's one way for me to pay homage to quite literally the greatest man I ever met. The man who changed my life, the man who I owe everything to, the man who beat me over the head with a crowbar for 5 years, and then even after that, trying desperately to stretch my mind and get me outside of the boxes that I was so desperately trying, not only to get in and stay in, but to drag him in with me somehow and force him to play by my rules and answer my questions according to the way I wanted them answered. So I'm going to start with, can we get the lights down a little bit into it? Is that possible? I'm going to start with a video. Some of you may recognize this video.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up. Ironically, this is not far from the truth. Do you believe in fate, Neil?
No,
Why not?
because I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life.
I know exactly what you mean. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Matrix.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room, you can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
The reason I showed you that clip is I'm hoping to abridge a lot of work telling you about my lousy childhood that actually wasn't very lousy. What's his name? Bill Clinton said at the Democratic Convention, which cracked me up. He said, every politician wants you to think he grew up in a log cabin. He was born in a log cabin that he built. But when I first saw this thing, and I've watched it 100 times, maybe a lot more since, the hair stood up on my neck. I still can't watch that video without the hair still standing up on my neck. Because that was me when I found myself in college at 18 or 19 years old. I was Neo, desperately looking for my Morpheus. Because there was something wrong with the world. There was a splinter in my mind. Of course, in the long run, I understood that it was the splinter, what was wrong with the world was me. But there was something wrong with the world. And what I wanted was the truth. Now, on the outside, as my father used to say, whenever I complained, I had, quote unquote, the world by the ass. I was very popular. I was doing incredibly well at school. I had all kinds of friends. I liked to party. Was fast tracking in Russian history. By the time I was a sophomore, I was already taking graduate level courses with professors in their houses, which I thought was really cool. And that we all had these plans. I was going to go to Columbia, and then I was going to go to Russia, and enough of that. And so on the outside, I was this happy-go-lucky guy without a care in the world. On the inside, I was dying. I think if I look back at it now, I would never have admitted it then. I don't think I even had the words for it. I was depressed. There was something wrong. And what was frightening me, I think, even though I had no words for it, is if all this great stuff that's happening is not doing it, now what? Where do you go? Where do you go? When a good-looking girl on a good party and good friends and everything is not doing it, what makes you think something else? There's something I'm looking for that the world can't offer me. Again, most of this was very subliminal. I was just kind of grasping around. Fundamentally, what I knew was I was unhappy. And I didn't have a clue as to what was going to make me, fix me. So I began turning more and more. But there was another part of me, and I see this also in this video. This is basically, by the way, this is about as old a motif as you can imagine. It goes across, as Joseph Campbell will tell you, this thing with Morpheus goes across every religious tradition that's as old as mankind. It's called the call. It's the same as the burning bush reaching out to Moses. Again and again and again. Somehow or another, there's a vocation, there's a call to the hero. And the hero is invited to take the road less traveled. The heroic journey somehow. Towards something with the dragons and all this kind of stuff. This is just as old as as mankind. And to me, this is the other thing. I see this as the vocation, the call to me. That this unhappiness that I had represented because there was another part of me. There was a sensitive part of me that also thought, there's got to be something more. I know there's something more. There's something out there, or in here, or up there, or down there. Something I can't define, something I can't put my finger on. Something wonderful, something incredible. This life is a treasure, it's a gift, it's an amazing opportunity. I've hit the lottery somehow. And when I felt that way, then of course it would flip over to another kind of depression because, oh my God, I am very much in danger of blowing it. I could blow this. You know, of course when I was 19, what was blowing it? I could end up like the old man. And of course, growing up in the late 60s and the 70s, the worst thing we could all imagine was growing up like the old man. Although I've asked a lot of younger college students, you know, intervening years, would you want your parents' lives? And very, very few of them say yes. And then the next question I ask was, what are you doing about it? What do you think, you're just in the lucky sperm club that somehow or another it's just going to work out for you? Which goes back to that big question we like to talk about at the SKS. Are you taking life for credit, or are you just auditing the course? But moving aside that's where I was. That was my mental state. So I turned to philosophy. I started taking classes. I started reading everything I could get my hands on. By the way, I was an atheist at the time, which made things worse. And I'm just reading everything. What's the life worth living? How can I plan my life out? How can I make things matter? What is purpose? What is meaning? And one of the things that I find, I'm not going to bore you with all that, but one of the things that I first remember really hit me in the gut was reading Hermann Hesse's, and it's a rite of passage. Anybody who reaches 20 and hasn't read Hermann Hesse, I feel sorry for you. And anybody that's still reading it at 22, I feel sorry for you. But Hermann Hesse, I'm reading Demian by Hermann Hesse. And right there, Demian says, all I ever wanted was to live in accordance with my own true self. Why is that so very difficult? And boy, that hit me like a ton of bricks. That's all I really wanted. So anyway, I'm looking around. I finally started gravitating into Eastern religions, and I like these for a lot of the same reasons I've already talked about. There wasn't a lot of ritual. There wasn't a lot of dogma. It was experiential. Find out for yourself. Don't figure it out. Find out. You don't have to believe in things. You don't have to take anything on faith. Take some basic hypotheses. And then one night I was bumming around the Jersey Shore for the summer, and some girls had taken us in because we were dead broke. And I was sleeping on the couch, and on the coffee table was a book by Alan Watts called This Is It. And I picked it up, and it was about Zen. I never heard of Zen. I read the book straight through all in one night twice. I didn't go to sleep at all that night. And to me, this was the most amazing, just pure experience. And if you find out who you are, you're going to know everything there is to know. And don't take my word for it. Go there and check it out and come back. So I started reading everything I could get my hands on about Zen. But then this went on for about a year or more than a year. And I can remember specifically, I was sitting there reading a book. There was an author called Christmas Humphreys. And I finished his book on Zen. And as soon as I finished it, I thought to myself, all I'm doing is reading these darn books. Zen isn't something to be read about, to be understood, to be described. It's something to experience, something to live. But I said to myself, how do I begin? Where do I find a teacher? And I fired the book against my mother's wall. Luckily, I didn't do any damage to it. I can remember though, I watched it slide down the wall. And but I came across that book years later, and in there, which I hadn't missed because I wasn't paying attention, as the Zen Master says you should, and in there it was written, when the pupil is ready, the teacher appears. No more than a couple of weeks after that, I got a telephone call from my boyhood friend, Ray Sosko, who he shared an interest in spirituality and everything. I got him into Zen, and he calls me up and he said, that guy that I was telling you about is going to be speaking on Sunday. You want to go on Zen? And I said, wow, yeah, absolutely. So on Sunday, he was speaking at a place called the Theosophical Society in downtown Pittsburgh. So on Sunday, I jumped on my motorcycle, went over to Ray's house, and we headed downtown and we got lost. And we're wandering around downtown Pittsburgh trying to find this Theosophical Society. And suddenly I look out the window and I see two men standing on a street corner. One was about 6 foot tall or so and bareheaded. And the other guy was about 5'6" or 5'7". He had a fedora hat on and a kind of round face. And as soon as I looked out the window and saw these two guys, I just screamed, "Stop the car, stop the car, it's him, I know it's him, stop the car." And so it took about a half a block for Ray to stop the car, and I jump out of the car and I start back up the street, and I still had the motorcycle on, I forgot to leave it in the car, and I'm walking up the street and I get about halfway to these two guys and they start to turn and look at me, and all of a sudden it dawns on me I have no evidence whatsoever that these guys had anything to do with a Zen lecture, let alone that this guy is, the shorter guy, is the speaker. So I get up there and I'm really embarrassed and they're still looking at me, and I said, "Is this the place where the Zen lecture is going to be held?" And the taller guy says, "Yeah." And then he says, "Do you think this guy can do you any good?" And without even thinking, I said, "I sure as hell hope so." And with that, the shorter guy just cracks up laughing and he says, "The name's Rose." And he sticks out his hand, and I grabbed his hand, and I'm looking into the most amazing blue eyes I've ever seen. And it was like I tripped into into the rabbit hole, because it was like a hall of mirrors. On the one sense, his welcome and his invitation and his friendliness pulled me in. On the other hand, I suddenly realized he was looking straight through me, out the back of my head, and out into God knows what. And this kind of push-pull just jerked my head. And suddenly I felt a zoop, like a jolt of some kind coming between us that drained every thought from my head. And it was gone as quickly as it came, and now I'm just standing there trying not to look ridiculous like an idiot. And I don't remember anything, how I got upstairs, but I got upstairs and I ended up sitting in the front row as he gave his lecture. Now, a lot of the things I'm not going to get into, it's not my point here tonight to communicate the logic and the intellect of what he was talking about. I want to get at the sense of the man more. I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, I was probably expecting some Eastern guy sitting on a raised dais, surrounded by flowers, beaming compassion from everywhere, drinking tea out of some cup, and speaking like in monosyllabic term. He was nothing like that. He was from West Virginia. He was straight talking. He was intense as hell. He was in people's face. He was constantly telling us, he started out by saying, "I'm going to tell you a secret that very, very few people know. And those that really know this secret have paid for it with their lives in some way or another." And we all leaned forward and said, "You're all going to die someday." And you don't believe it. And you're living like you're going to live forever. You don't know who you are, where you came from, what's going to happen to you. It's like you were pushed off a cliff at birth. And you think if you hang on to all this clutter and stuff in your life, that somehow when you hit the ground, it'll protect you from it. He said it's not going to protect you. And so he went on talking like that, and he was saying, hey, it's not a question of believing things, it's a question of unbelieving. It's a question of questioning your assumptions, of backing away from what isn't true. And like Morpheus, the thing that I really remember about him is he said, just like Morpheus, I'm not promising you anything but the truth. I'm not here to make you happy. I'm not here to make you sad. I'm not here to inspire you. I'm not here to depress you. I'm here for those people who want the truth. And what I do remember, though, is him answering questions and how much fun he had, and how, as people got the hang of it, he wasn't giving people the kind of answers that they wanted. And one woman said, "What about us that want peace of mind, Mr. Rose?" He said, "You want peace of mind? That's what you want?" He said, "Good." He said, "You're going to get a whole eternity of it in the marble orchard. You don't need me. Sit back, relax. It's coming in a few years. You'll be up." He said, "I'm not here to lull you to sleep. I'm here to wake you up. I'm here to stir you up. I'm here to," he didn't use the term because it wasn't around that. "I'm here to get in your face." He said, "I'm here to get you start you thinking and keep you thinking until you finally realize that what you're looking for can't be thought, can't be felt, and can't be touched. And when you finally realize that, then you'll be getting somewhere. Somebody asked about expanding consciousness. He said, I don't know about expanding consciousness. He said, I get this impression of guy's ego blowing up like a balloon that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger until, I don't know, God's got to move over to give the guy a room. He said, if that's what you want, he says, don't hang around with me. He said, I am the balloon's worst enemy, the hat pin. He said, let me tell you a story. He said, there once was a Shakespearean actor. He said, I don't remember his name, let's call him Brown. And he was so good at playing Shylock that he would work himself up into such a pitch that he would go out on stage in The Merchant of Venice, and he damn well was Shylock. But there was a problem. He said he did such a good job that after the performance was over, he couldn't remember that he was Brown and not Shylock. He said, so 2 stagehands would have to walk him up and down an alley, feeding him whiskey and slapping him around behind the theater and screaming in his ear, you're not Shylock, you're Brown. You're not Shylock, you're Brown. He said finally, after 15 or 20 minutes, the guy would shake his head and he would remember that he was actually Brown. He said, so you want to know who I am? I'm nobody. I'm just a stagehand. And if you let me, I'm going to walk up and down some of those alleyways deep in your mind. And I'm going to be screaming into your mind's ear. You're not Joe Blow, God's gift to women. You're not Joe Blow, chairman of the board. You're not Joe Blow, empty and depressed. You're not Joe Blow at all. You're God. And suddenly, the guy that he was talking to, who had started to give him some crap, started to cry. And Rose just kept looking at him. He said, the ego you're defending is a coward. Let him die. And then I was sitting right in the front seat here, so he just grabbed a seat like this, he turned it around like that, and he sat down. And for the next 15 or 20 minutes, we just sat in silence. And there was an incredible energy in the room. It's amazing energy. It was what it felt like to me was like being 100% relaxed and 100% charged at the same time. Super alert and incredibly relaxed, feeling that I'd never felt before. And it went on for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then finally he said, he just looked up, he was looking down at his fingers, and he looked up and he said, words mean nothing. And he stood up and the lecture was over. So as soon as the lecture was over, everybody started filing out, and everybody was kind of quiet, still in the mood from the meditation. I ran up to him and started shaking his hand and saying, wow, this is incredible. And I'd never seen somebody who could switch it on and switch it off and go from this ball-peen hammer of a man, this laser beam of just absolute conviction. You know, as I wrote about him, and I said, he was a man who was clearly getting on, who knew who he was and what he was about, and he was getting on with it, and the rest of the world be damned. I don't think there's any young person, especially a young man, who doesn't want that kind of a feeling, that kind of self-confidence. On the other hand, he seemed to be an incredibly compassionate person as well. So I ran up to him and I said, Mr. Rose, how can I see you some other time? I said, this was wonderful. I said, when are all your lectures this intense? And he said, I said, this is nothing. He said, come on down to West Virginia sometime. He said, there's some real circuses down there. They run 24/7. He said, this is nothing compared to that. And by the way, he said, I don't know. He said, this is my first lecture I've ever given. So he says, I only live 60 miles away down in Wheeling. He said, if you ever take a notion, he said, come on down and see me. And he gives me his telephone number, 304-232-2799. So I left. But as he walked out and I was standing there, what I remember now is that my attitude was, dang, I didn't ask him the question I really wanted to ask him. And that question was, what will happen to me on the sidewalk? What was that?